It's fundamentally wrong to shut our government down. And if you want to reform ICE, as the Democrats, we do want some once, but that is not going to do that. And now why you're doing it, for me, it's always about country over party. And that's why I'll refuse to vote to shut the government down.
And that was Pennsylvania Senator John Fetterman with me yesterday here, telling me it is fundamentally wrong to shut down government, as the partial shutdown of the Department of Homeland Security now reaches day 5. The White House rejecting the latest offer from Democrat lawmakers yesterday, who proposed new constraints on federal immigration officers. DHS funding lapsed Saturday, leaving much of the department working without pay. ICE operations, however, remain largely unaffected because of the money put in the big, beautiful bill for ICE. Joining me now is North Carolina Congressman Mark Harris. Congressman, good to see you. Thank you so much for being here this morning.
Good to see you.
And I know that lawmakers are on recess until Monday. You and your colleagues will be back next week. But do you have a plan in terms of what happens next with the Department of Homeland Security?
Well, I think, again, when you look at this situation, we are waiting as negotiations are continuing between the White House and Chuck Schumer. This is totally Chuck Schumer's doing, and his Senate Democrats that are once again determining that they're going to use the American people for leverage. They want to inflict pain on the American people, and quite frankly, it is just totally irresponsible and quite scary when you think about the folks that are being affected by this. I mean, the TSA agents, the Coast Guard, and the work that they do, as well as FEMA, Secret Service, all of these folks who protect Americans day in and day out are now being put on the sidelines for a political play that, once again, Chuck Schumer has decided he's going to try and do. So negotiations are continuing. I don't know that they're going well. As you pointed out earlier, the Democrats sent over something to the White House. The White House has been very clear. We're not going to put our ICE agents at risk. Some of the things they're offering are just non-starters from the beginning. And so I think that President Trump is committed to what he's doing, and we're going to make sure that our men and women are protected as they're out there doing the job they were put there to do.
I mean, is this an opportunity to try to interrupt the President's State of the Union address, which, of course, is next Tuesday night? This has happened. I'm having a little deja vu, because back in 2019, the president had to reschedule a State of the Union in his first term because of the same thing, a government shutdown.
Well, I think that seems to be a page right out of the Democrats' playbook. And that is, if we don't have a message, we don't really have a leader of our party, we don't have a winning issue with the American people, what we do is create chaos. And that's exactly what they've decided to do. And so anything that can throw a wrench in the momentum that this administration has had, the wins that President Trump has been mounting, along with the Republican Congress that has been moving things forward. And so this seems to be the only play they've got. And here they are, once again, trying to do it.
Well, look, then there's the SAVE Act, an overhaul of the American voter laws. All the Republicans are asking for is voter ID. You've got 50 supporters on this in the Senate already, but of course you need 60 votes. President Trump is urging Senate Majority Leader John Thune to scrap the filibuster and pass this with a simple majority. Where are you on the SAVE Act right now, which of course would require individuals to have ID to vote?
Absolutely. It is essential that we pass the Save America Act in this Congress. We have done it again just last week here in the U.S. House. We made sure that we got it over the finish line. We've sent it to the Senate. Listen, it is just common sense, Maria, and you know that, to say that you need to be an American citizen and proof of citizenship to register to vote, and then be able to show a photo ID when you vote to prove that you are who you say you are, is just common sense.
Right.
And so right now it's going to be in the hands of the Senate. Listen, at a very minimum, they need to use the talking filibuster and force the Democrats to have to stand up there and speak for hours and hours. But the reality is that if they will use, the rules are already there. If Senator Thune and the Republicans will stand strong and just use the talking filibuster, it'll take a little longer, but we'll get it through. And it is critical in this upcoming election that Americans have the confidence of free and fair elections.
Right. No,
sure.
I mean, look, I spoke with Senator Haggerty over the weekend, a senator from Tennessee, who said they are, in fact, examining that so-called talking filibuster. But I just want to get your take on what's in the Save America Act, because yesterday we had John Fetterman on, And the senator from Pennsylvania basically said, yeah, I agree, we should have an ID to vote. But do you think there is anything else in that bill? Does it need to be adjusted to ensure that that's all it says, ID to vote, to really put your colleagues on the left on the spot to say what's wrong with having an ID to vote? Because, you know, the senator made it sound like there were other things in that bill that were clouding up what is really what you're right, 80+% of Americans believe in, that we should have an ID to vote. Is there any conversation about potentially an adjustment on that bill?
I don't know of any other adjustment that's necessary. I spoke on the floor House last week and pointed out that there's really three things that get accomplished by this. Number one, you're going to require proofs of citizenship when you register. In my own state of North Carolina, last fall, the DMV pointed out that they had registered non-citizens to vote. And I think that's a very important fact that we see is happening. Secondly, proof of your voter ID or photo ID when you go to vote to prove who you are is the second thing. And the other thing is going to allow the federal government to share the information with the states of who is illegal and registered and who's not, so that they can clean up their voter rolls. That's the only other thing that this is going to do. And it's going to be important for all of our states to be able to be held accountable and to make sure their elections are secure.
Could the president just implement an executive order to get the SAVE Act across the finish line going into the midterms?
Well, that's a great question. I've not heard that question posed before, but I don't know the answer to that, quite frankly.
He said he would be willing to do executive action. So I'm wondering if you could do executive action on this, or do the states push back and say, no, elections are under the state purview?
Listen, I think that we all believe that states should control and run their elections, but I find it rich that Democrats who are looking to nationalize elections all the time are using that as an argument on these very clear principles that I think are going to protect people across the country. And because we have so many states that are in question and how they're operating, listen, this is just something that's going to give the American people confidence in federal elections. That's what this is about, making sure that in our federal elections, these things happen. So nobody's taking control away from the states and their state and local elections.
Congressman, we will be watching your work on this. We appreciate your time this morning, sir. Thank you. Congressman Mark Harris.
Thank you. Pleasure to be with you.
And to you.